This is Hashtag Finance, presented to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange, the exchange for entrepreneurs. With your host, Anil Mall.
Welcome to all our viewers and listeners to another episode of Hashtag Finance. This is a podcast brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. And today, as part of our latest initiative, which is Mining Mondays, I will be talking to Joseph Carrabba. Joseph is the president and CEO of a company called Bond Resources. And Bond Resources is obviously a mineral resource company. It holds contractual rights to acquire the Mary Kay mine, which is in Elk City in the mining district of Idaho. I'm going to go ahead and let you do a lot of the intro and talking there, Joseph. But how are you? Welcome to the Hashtag Finance podcast.
Well, thank you, Anil. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And to all the viewers, thanks for taking your time when you see this to listen in. We think we've got a very exciting project here. We're just getting our feet into it. We've been into it for about 9 months right now, and very excited with the prospects in the Elk City district, the 420 acres of land that we have acquired, and the potential of the not only the old historic Mary Kay mine, but it's really an untapped area as far as drilling and exploration. And if you ever perchance go to Elk City, Idaho, you'll see why. It is, Elk City is all of 200 people, and let me tell you, it is absolutely at the end of the road where it goes with it. So I do see why exploration hasn't taken place here in the present time.
Yep, I love that introduction to the company that you gave us, and we'll get into all of those details, the jurisdiction, why
Sure.
Idaho, the benefit, the positives of what you guys are working on. But where are you right now?
So from a project standpoint, as you know, we just completed the transaction with Bond. That is, MJ Mining was a private company that myself and my partner Murray and I had formed to get this deal done with two groups of private individuals over in central Idaho as well. Yeah. Trading restarted with Bond on the CSE, as you know, I think late last week. With that, very excited to get that one over the deal line and getting traded started from there. We have done a number of different things with this. Let me start with the state of Idaho has been exceptional to work with. It's a great district within the United States to be in. While they do uphold the highest standards environmentally and from a mining practice standpoint, which we adhere to, they're also positive in the way that they want to get mining back up and going, particularly in this part of Idaho and central Idaho. That's I think has got pretty underdeveloped where it goes from there. So with that, we have started the bulk sampling process. With that, we're allowed to, on the surface, go up and take bulk samples. We've got loaders and dozers up there, and we've mined about 400 tons. We've built a small pilot plant over in Grangeville that we're doing our test work and our preliminary metallurgical work with, and that's coming out very positive. We had a very good met test results that came back recently. With that, we're putting our drill program together and mobilizing the equipment as we speak. We should be drilling by the middle of June and have results thereafter. These are a number of shallow holes that just confirms the vein that the Mary Kay is on and below it as we get into it. We've starting to mobilize all of the equipment and people we need for the re-entry of the portal and getting supplies on the ground and getting equipment and getting ready to go there. So a lot going on, very positive as we move forward. And I have to say the other thing is we just received our permit for the underground mining, which really only took about 4 months. So we were quite excited to get that as well. So permitting is moving along. People and equipment are moving along as well as testing.
That's great news, Joseph, especially at this time during this pandemic that everyone's kind of dealing with, or I should say the whole world is dealing with. Did you guys find any sort of hurdles that you had to overcome during this time in order for you to be able to move things forward? You know, obviously you mentioned that equipment is coming there on time. You've got
Right.
staff and everybody. So how did planning and getting everything ready to go for this project, and how did this pandemic, or did it affect that?
You know, I think it always did affect it, but we're all learning to live in the new world order, if you will, with it. Our people have been fantastic with that. We've done all of the social distance practicing that we can, wearing respirators that, you know, in mining, that's a pretty common place to start with anyway. Social distance with the people, even for their lunch breaks and things like that, you know, we normally don't do, that comes with it. And then I have to say the guys too, on their off time, did self-isolation as well, so they could come back to work very healthy with that. So we've had a number of discussions with our employees, and we've made sure that everybody is comfortable as we do that. I think one of the biggest, I wouldn't call it an obstacle or hurdle, but it's just what we're doing today. It's, you know, learning to work in with Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams and all the other variety of these type of technology that we have now. I mean, it's different, particularly, you know, when a guy like me is used to dealing with people face to face and loves the interaction of the individual, but we have made that work, and it's a skill that we've got to practice and do. So yeah, we're finding a few shortages out there, but again, I think all industries are overcoming them very quickly. So yeah, there's somewhat of a lag, maybe a month or two in our schedule, but nothing given the difficulties of the times that we're in. It's been exceedingly positive, I think.
Absolutely, Joseph. You know, at one point in time, we would have probably ran into each other somewhere in Vancouver or in Toronto at a
Right.
conference, or when you were out for a road show, and we would be sitting in a studio filming this podcast and recording it. And
Right.
and here we are. You're in North Carolina right now, is that correct? You're on your
Yes,
boat?
that's correct. Yes. Yep, we sure are. Nice place to self-isolate.
I had a sneak peek of your view, and it looked beautiful out there. I just want to let our viewers know. And yeah, so, you know, everybody's had to learn and adapt. And I think moving forward, we'll be a lot more almost productive in the time that we have and where we're allocating it, whether it's travel or meetings and things like that. So I'm glad that you brought up that point. Now, you mentioned Idaho. Do you want to maybe talk to us a little bit about, you know, because we have a lot of younger listeners and viewers that might not necessarily know the potential of Idaho, the past history. Do you want to maybe give us a quick breakdown on that?
Sure. Be glad to. I'll talk mining history all day with anybody.
Oh, I would love that.
You know, Idaho really was one of the founding states when it came, you know, early on in the pioneer days and with the mining, you know, with Hecla and the great silver mines that they've had up near the Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene now is a wonderful resort, vacation, and place to live. But it was a mining center at one time early on with that. So, you know, it's got a rich history with it. Where we are in central Idaho as well. This was the edge of what they call the Idaho batholith. There was a number of small older mines that started in the early 1900s. And they all started with the classic placer mines, if you will, as they went up the gulches till they found the source of the deposits, that is, like the Mary Kay mine that goes with it.
You want to just jump in and maybe give a quick description of a placer mine for people that might not know?
Sure. Placer mines they went up where the free gold had eroded out from the source rock with it. The free gold came through the gulches, if you will, when the erosion and the water came through the gulches with it. And that gold, being heavier than anything else, would settle into the creek bottoms and the gulches bottoms from there. The placer miners would go up, I mean, very unfriendly environmentally. We wouldn't do it today, at least not on a large scale, but would use, you know, high pressure water hoses, if you will, whoosh the rock down, run it through sluices that you see pretty much on the old time TVs shows that go with it, and capture the free gold. They didn't have any processing technology beyond that. Okay. So when they did hit the source rock, that is the vein, they left that behind. That wasn't their interest at all. They would just run up the numerous gulches and all that and get the free gold. But it did lead to the discovery of where we're at now, like with the Mary Kay mine, with the hard rock veins that are there.
Got it. Talk to us about the Mary Kay mine and the jurisdiction of Elk City.
Sure. Like I say, first on regional jurisdiction, Elk City area and that whole regional area had a series of small mines that went through it. The most productive was called the Buster mine, that wasn't far away from where the Mary Kay mine was. This is described by the geologists as a series of echelons, if you will, or stacked veins that came across the countryside in this regional area. And the small mines that came into production show that in various ways, which is why we're very excited about this property that we have that's been unexplored with it. We think there's great potential for more of these stacked veins. So the history of it, the project is quite interesting. It was first staked and mined in 1908 by a group. Eventually, it was taken over by a German mining engineer by the name of Richard Kleesaddle. And it was German immigrants that were in the Elk City area that started the Mary Kay mine. Mr. Kleesaddle mined this in the early 1900s. The wars, both World War I and World War II, both interrupted the mining cycle that came with it. On the number 4 level, which is the level we're going back into, there's an old map that you see on our website on the investor presentation that's got 2,000 feet of strike that they drove along the adit to get at the gold. And in that, they found some very high grade material that are reportedly in the 40 to 50 ounce per ton range. Now, we don't expect to see that all across this mine. The bulk sampling we've done, we're coming out at about 3/4 of an ounce, about 0.67 ounces per ton of gold, which again is still an extremely rich deposit. But that's where our first drilling will be, is underneath those old winces, if you will, into that picture rock, as Mr. Kleesaddle described it, to see if we can hit that high-grade zone and vein as well. After the war, everything was interrupted in the war, as you know, in the United States. Roosevelt declared all the gold mining basically no longer in private hands, and all the gold was frozen at $32 an ounce as far as pricing. It all had to be sold to the U.S. government. He was really after trying to turn the gold miners, the silver miners, into mining for war materials, copper, iron ore, bauxite for aluminum, things of that nature that went with it. That really killed the whole industry, and it's a lot of when people ask, well, why was there this gap? You know, what happened to these mines and where did the expertise go? Well, as you know, gold was frozen until actually it was Richard Nixon brought the gold standard, took the gold standard off, and it wasn't until I believe it was 1970 or 71. And those of us that are old enough can remember when gold shot up to $800 an ounce, and there were a lot of fortunes made and lost during those times. So from the period of pre-World War I to 1970s, you know, gold mining was basically at a halt, and we lost the expertise that went with it. As you know, gold went up and down, but it stayed pretty low as far as the pricing went with it. So gold was suppressed in the mining. It was suppressed until really the Carlin Trend came on in northern Nevada, and the technology came on to mine the low-grade heap leach that we'd never seen before. Sorry to get into the history, but that is how it all worked. Now that we've seen the rise of gold again, coming back into the $1,700 again, obviously everybody is relooking at these old deposits, these old historic sites. You know, what wasn't profitable for them back in those days at $30 an ounce certainly is more than profitable today for folks like us. And our techniques and technology for processing this gold have just changed enormously. So we're very efficient with these lower grade deposits compared to history. Hence why people are going back into these historic districts that have been laid untouched. And we're so happy to have found this one and gotten ahead of the curve on it.
Joseph, what about some of this technology that you just mentioned, can you talk to us a little bit about the new techniques or different techniques, I can say, that you guys are using or companies use nowadays, rather than, obviously not something that went in the 1900s, but how is it helping you guys get more gold out of the ground in
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. Well, I goes all the way from exploration now by using techniques such as the satellite technology that we can use to look at aerial views, large aerial views, down to these new flying techniques of LiDAR that I'm sure you've seen on the History Channel or Discovery or something like that, that basically strips the land almost bare, and you get a very good look at prominent features such as outcrops of quartz veins that may be across the property, or prominent features that go with us. We are utilizing all of those techniques to, one, find the drill holes and where we want the drilling to do, versus a little bit of guess with some science that goes with it, but it just allows us to hone in and be more efficient there. On the drilling, the core drilling has picked up immensely as far as the technology of the core drilling, being able to drill multiple holes from a single drill pad at different angles that go with it. The assaying labs that we have now for ourselves, and we think it's one of our edges, rather than ship the assay off and wait 6 or 8 weeks, we always build our own assay lab with our own assayers so that we can turn those cores around, and if we get into production very quickly, almost within 24 to 48 hours, so that we know whether, when exploration, to keep drilling or change locations. Certainly when it comes to the mining practices, we will have a very good handle on dilution of the gold vein and being able to mine that much more efficiently and get a higher recovery that comes out with it. The mobile equipment, obviously from the old days of jacklegs and dynamite, the explosives are much more safe to work with and easier to work with as well. The jumbo drills that we have that we can set up can do, a whole face without moving the drill practically that goes with it. Ventilation techniques that all go in with clean air for the miners and the equipment that goes in, all the way through from the scoops that we have that everything is motorized. And as you know, even now there's quite a movement going on. I think Newmont has just put the first mine in Canada in place that's all electric, and I expect to see, these mines all going to an all electric fleet in the next few years, if you will. Certainly better for the environment, better for the individuals, and I look forward to that equipment becoming commercialized along as it goes. From the processing plant side, obviously now with the ball mills, or rod mills, the grinding techniques that we have for the mineral separation physically into the flotation cells and all the different chemicals we can use to get the recovery out is quite complex. The metallurgists have got quite a handle on it, and it really helps with the recovery all the way through. And I have to say, we're on the environmental side, you're right, these large tailings dams, we're now all looking at dry stack tailings. We can recirculate the water, use a lot less fresh water as we come in. And on the dry stack, we don't have these enormous tailings ponds, but we can contain the tailings much better and much more efficiently. So, that's the whole scope from exploration all the way through to processing. But I think it gives you a good flavor of where the industry's come from. And I think, let me continue on with the environmental sustainability. I mean, I tell everybody, I said, we can all dig dirt. We all went to the same schools. We learned the same practices. We use the same equipment. But working on the other pieces, the sustainability from the people, the communities, all the way through the environment, that's what makes the difference in miners. And I think particularly in the small miners, we have to take the leads on that. We cannot use the excuse of being a small guy and the big guys have all the money to do it. If you do it right, you can actually do it efficiently, and you'll actually make more money in the long run. So I'm a very big proponent of building that in as we go.
I really like that you brought that point up. That was one of my questions that I was going to ask, but just generally it came out in the conversation, and I'm glad that as a company, you guys are taking a proactive approach to the mining, protecting the land as much as you possibly can, along with, your teams, and making sure that your shareholders are happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the Newmont board, privileged to be on the Newmont board for 9 years, and I was the chairman of the Sustainability Operations and Safety Committee, and Newmont has just done a fabulous job in the world of sustainability and is on the leading edge with the mining companies around the world. So hopefully I contributed somewhat to that, but I certainly learned a lot as well. So I like to hopefully bring those best practices into the small mining world as well.
Yeah. And speaking about your background, I mean, you've got, I think, over 42 years of management and operational experience in the resource space. And you've worked at mines, multinational mining operations all over the world, North America, Australia, Latin America, Asia. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your past experience, how you got into this space, and what kind of gave you the passion and to continue on working in this industry?
Sure. I'll try and make it brief, but I do love to tell the journey as well. Okay. I went to a small school in Columbus, Ohio called Capital University, and had no idea that I was going to go to college at all. I was a farm boy from Ohio, and always had a job and always had a few bucks in my pocket back in those days. So when I did show up on campus, I had a small football scholarship to go. The professor's like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, something that keeps me outdoors the rest of my life. And he said, we got a great geology department. I didn't know what geology was. There was no mines in the area of my farming community I was in. I had no family history in it. I took the first few classes, got to run around in the woods and beat on rocks with a hammer and sleep outdoors and field trips. And I was all in from there. So I was very fortunate from there. I got out of school in 74 and went to work in the coal mines, underground coal mines in Appalachia, where I met my wife, a coal miner's daughter of 44 years of marriage from there. And we went from there.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm very blessed to have a wife that has supported my career and has picked up and moved constantly from one end of the world to the other, from some pretty nice spots to some pretty isolated spots as well. So from the coal industry, I was in industrial minerals with Pfizer out in California. Believe it or not, the drug company at one time had an industrial mineral company. They were the largest producers of citric acid, and they needed high quality lime. So I ran the mines in California for high grade calcium carbonates, learned a lot there about marketing, which, a lot of commodity miners, that's just not our business, but really got that whole aspect of the R&D and the marketing side that went with it. From there, followed a fellow in that became the president of U.S. Silica, and eventually ran 8 silica sand mines and clay mines around the country. And we were bought by what was an arm of Rio Tinto called U.S. Borax. So I transferred out there and then ran the boric acid plant and the shipping and transportation plant. Rio is just a wonderful company. About if you've got the talent and you're willing to take the moves, they will put you in different locations. I understood the mining and the processing, and they gave me new challenges all the way through from there. From there, with Rio Tinto, I went to Australia. I ran and lived in a very remote community in northern Australia called Weipa, and ran a bauxite operation. Got a black belt in Six Sigma along the way, and did executive education at Stanford University for Asian Studies and IMD in Geneva, Switzerland for European Studies. And then went from there to the UK and ran the European operations and transportation and logistics for the industrial minerals for Rio. And from there, I went to Singapore and ran the commercial operations and logistics. Back to California to Borax. They had the pit collapse, and they asked me to come back for that. And then I went to Diavik Diamond Mines. It was just opening up in Yellowknife, and I actually lived in Yellowknife for 3 years. I should say 3 long winters. And brought the diamond mine on into production, and from there was recruited out as the CEO and chairman of Cleveland Cliffs, a large iron ore and met coal producer around the world for the steel industry. and then left there, retired from there in 2014. A number of boards, Newmont being one that I just resigned from. I'm still on the Acon Construction Board out of Toronto, and Timken Steel, as well as Winston Gold, the executive chair of that, Bond as the CEO, and Terrace Resources as well. So I've been very blessed with my career, Anil, and the people I've met and the mentors I've had along my life, and I enjoy getting my hands dirty again, like I say. Working with the guys, I can't wait to get back out there and get my boots dirty again, and I really enjoy that piece of the work that goes with it. So I've been very blessed along my career.
I was going to say, I think you probably have, I don't want to say the longest, but the most interesting career path in this space. Like you've worked all over the world. You've worked for notable companies all over in this space, and it's brought you now over to Bond Resources to, hopefully provide some value to your shareholders there. What about some of your other team members? Do you want to maybe talk about some of your team that you guys have put together with their expertise to move this forward?
Absolutely. So Brooks Heinze is the chief geologist. Brooks worked at Barrick at one time in Cortez in ore quality control. He's been over at Winston with the other company that we're engaged with, and we're moving him over to Idaho and putting another geo in place as we get into production at Winston. Brooks has been very valuable in all of the exploration that we've done at Winston as well. Terry Mulvihill is a mining engineer. He was just up at Pogo in Alaska, and he's brought a lot of value in the mining engineering space with it. And then we just hired a gentleman out of Sibane Stillwater, a metallurgist that we're going to use in the mill, but in both. And we share the resources in both places, Anil, even though there's no affiliation with the company, but we know the group. They're quite frankly they're overpowered for a small operation like Winston, and they're eager to take on more, and we can share the overhead and the expenses as well that goes with it. We have two very good, experienced underground miners, Tim Hunter, that's been in the area for a long time, and Dave Wheatley. Dave also does all of our safety, and he has all of the qualifications to do the safety training as well. So we keep safety number one in front, and Dave keeps us with that as well. On the environmental side, we use a gentleman out of Idaho or out of Montana named Pete Strastis, who does all of our environmental work. He's a former Montana DEQ individual that worked there. So Pete keeps the environmental side going. And then Murray Nye, who's the CEO of Winston, has got a long track history in this business with RX Exploration and Drumlummon Mine, is an advisor to the company as well. And then we've just recruited an all-star board as well that, again, we can grow with quite easily. So very excited about. That was my biggest risk, Anil. I thought coming into this was, how are we ever going to get talent, into a small startup company that, is always marginal on the finances. There's always risk when you join a company like this, but we're very excited about the talent we've attracted and the teamwork that we've been able to instill in everybody.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And you also mentioned that you guys added to the board. I think that was just recently to new members.
It is. Yeah.
Now, is this project in Idaho your only focus, the Mary Kay past producing mine, or are you guys looking at other stuff in that area or elsewhere?
Sure, we're definitely looking at other things in the area. People are bringing projects in now. I think Anil, in this junior space, what I've also found is once you get a reputation in the area, that basically you do what you say you're going to do. You make payments and the promises and commitments on time. These guys have all been taken, if you will, one time or another, and so they're very skeptical going into these deals, which I don't blame them. But word of mouth does spread very quickly. So, yeah, we're getting a lot of projects to look at. We do our due diligence. Of course, you have to sort a lot of them out, but within the specific area, yeah, we certainly think there's more to come. certainly, if you will, with my background, I'm not a one mine guy. I mean, we got to focus and get the Mary Kay into production, but certainly bigger things are on the horizon.
Do you guys have some sort of a timeline that you can talk about to get to that production stage?
Sure. So we're looking at running at about 150 tons a day as we ramp up. By the middle of 2021, we think we'll be at that 150 tons a day, which will translate to about 25 to 30,000 ounces of gold a year as we move forward from there. Then, as you know, as we bring more headings in and we develop further the ramps down into the next level of the mine, we can ramp that up. Our ultimate goal is 1 million ounces of 43-101 reserves and 100,000 ounces of production. And we think we've got a pretty clear pathway with that in the next 2 to 3 years to get to there. That's what puts you into that, I would call it mid-major status, if you will. And when people really start taking notice of you as well. So that's the goal, and we've got a strategy in behind it, and that's where we're striving. But number one, let's get the Mary Kay into production. Let's be a producer, and let's separate ourselves from all the other exploration companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like your story and you know all the stuff you're working on. You mentioned about when we were just recently talking about you know, being approached within the community with different projects based on, you know, your success and meeting milestones. How else is a company like Bond Resources working with the community and you know, kind of making them feel as that they're valued as well?
Well, normally when we go into a community, the first outreach is certainly with the emergency services people. In that, make sure they know who we are. They get a good tour of the facility. You know, we make sure we have good communication lines of, you know, if we were ever to have an accident or something like that, that we could work together. We certainly follow that up with donations in kind that are needed to support us. We don't want to be a freeloader, if you will, or be a burden in a community that goes there as well. We do try and hold town meetings once we get going and have information to the local communities and answer any questions that we may have. If we can do any local procurement, we will. I mean, you know, it's somewhat limited in a little small town in Elk City, but for example, you know, we do need lodging, and there are a few small hotels there that we're working with to get our folks in and use there. Of course, there'll be supplies, food, things like that, and any of the smaller things, smaller trucking companies that we're using right now, just anything we can use before you go to the big city, if you will. Try and get as much local supply into the community as well, have those conversations. And then, of course, you know, as things move on, you know, we will work with different community groups, assess their needs along with them, and see what donations we can put in place. And it's not just all about money, you know, it's time spent with folks as well. It's not a charity event, if you will. It's building something together within a community. And, you know, we're just new to the small community. It's been winter time there, so a lot of folks haven't been there in the winter, and this summer I'm sure we'll have a lot of engagement. I'm finally going to get out there next week, actually. I can travel now. Restrictions have been lifted, and I can't wait to get out in the communities and up at the mine site next week. So it'll be exciting to get all that started.
That is great. What about the infrastructure? Like how far is your mine from the community itself, access to roads and power and things like that? Is it fairly convenient for you guys, or?
Yeah, it is. It's we're about I would say maybe a mile off of the hardtop road, okay. The small 2-lane road that goes up, and we're building our roads onto the property as we speak. Most of those are completed. We started last fall, actually. Had to stop for the winter. We are probably, I'm going to make a guess here, 5 to 10 miles from the local community as it goes from there. Power lines are very close by the mine, so pulling power in won't be a problem. And we have access to water as well from a couple of the local creeks that are in the area that we have water rights to as well. So for being as remote as we are, we're in pretty good shape as far as that goes. We will probably have to end up building a modular village, if you will, for housing of the employees that come in and come out. As I understand it, summertime gets pretty busy for the tourist season up there, and the small hotels get pretty well booked up from there, and we want to make sure that we stay out of their way, if you will, with it, and it's been a good start from there. So, yeah, we got to bring some modular buildings in with it, but, building mine camps now, the way they can set them up so quickly, it's it's pretty easy to do. It's not, you don't have to build massive buildings or anything like that. So, all that's under progress.
It's got to be warm. It's got to be comfortable.
Yes, sir. You got to feed them well, put them to bed nicely.
What do you guys feed them? Can I ask?
Oh, sure. Steak is number one on the menu, right? But I have to say, we try and bring in a little bit of a healthy menu as well with it. We make sure that there's green vegetables and salads and things of those as well. And breakfast as well, that there's a good variety for the guys to eat. Normally it's the typical sandwiches and that type of fare and fruit for lunches. But you too try and bring in a healthy lifestyle as much as you can with these camps.
How do you guys keep the morale up on camps? Because I would imagine it's hard, not imagine, it's definitely hard work. It's long days. They're away from their families. What do you guys do as a team to keep their morale boosted?
Well, you communicate a lot. You make sure that people know what's going on. You answer their questions as honestly as you possibly can. As you know, in any society, small or big like this, if you leave a hole in the communications, it only goes negative with speculation. So we try and bring people with that. In our other mines, we have given stock options to the miners as well, so they're a part of it, and really a good education on, well, what is a stock option, and how does it work, how do I look at the share price, how do I contribute to the share price of this company and to the I'm a component of the value equation of this. Nobody's ever explained that to people. I remember it was years before I ever had any of that training starting out. You're like, well, what am I doing here, for the profitability that goes with these companies? It's really important people understand their, what their role is and how vital their role is that goes with it. So it's as much as that. I mean, it's like, like the guys over at Winston, they just completed the 900-foot access tunnel. And I said, hey, guys, you do it without an accident, steak dinner's on me. So next week I'll be happily shelling out a lot for steaks for the miners, and let me tell you, they can eat some big steaks. So,
I bet.
But nothing beats, and I love it. Nothing beats hanging out with these guys, seeing what they're thinking about, what their issues are, what their problems are, and you know what? They have a lot of great ideas if you'll just listen. These guys have been around a long time, and they're very valuable assets that sometimes just are underutilized.
I love it. The communication. I mean, it's a must in every industry to keep that open line of communication with your people, whether they be your employees, shareholders, or colleagues. It's very important.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Joe, so obviously you guys are in a great jurisdiction. You have a very strong team and background to move this forward. You guys have great relationships within the community and your employees. So why don't I let you talk to our viewers about maybe some of the stuff? I know you've mentioned it briefly, but why don't we start kind of winding down, and I'll leave the floor with you. Talk to our viewers and listeners about what they should be looking out from a company like Bond Resources and its team.
Great. Well, we will give regular quarterly updates, and you'll always be able to find them on our website. We'll post those as quickly as we can. I always like to write a letter, if you will, on each quarter in a pretty plain language with what's going on. I think you'll be able to follow the progress of our mine planning facilities, our exploration, very closely that goes with it. And, hold us accountable, if you will, with the timelines that we put in. We work very hard on putting budgets and plans in place. We are not speculators. We're not trying to flip or be promoters in this. We're operators to bring a mine into production that goes with it. Sometimes I don't bend to the wills of others because it's better for the long term than the short term that goes with it. And just follow our progress along. We do a lot of work in risk assessment. I'm very big on that and work very hard on our budgets. We think this deposit is high enough in value with what we've seen so far, Anil. Now it's early days that goes with it, but from the work that we've done so far, we don't have to speculate. We don't have to stretch. And that goes with our budgets as well. We put plenty of contingency in our budgets as well because, Mother Nature is not always kind and things do happen occasionally from weather to ground control to you name it. And we're used to that in the mining industry. It doesn't always go smooth and you have to deal with it, but you have to be ready for it. It's not based on hope. It's based on planning, risk assessment, and good mitigation that goes with it. So, and feel free to reach out. My personal email is on the bottom of the investor presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions anytime. I mean, the shareholders do own the company, and I respect that.
I love that. Why don't you let our listeners and viewers know your website and your ticker?
So the website is bondresources.ca. One word, bondresources.ca. The ticker is BJB, and of course on the CSE. Where else would we be?
I love that. We love having you guys on there, Joseph. I look forward to hosting you again in the near future. We can talk about what you guys have built off this podcast and currently with your new season coming up. What we like to do here at the CSE, Joseph, is we like to encourage a lot of young investors to, they've made money in cannabis, tech, esports, but we like to encourage them to look into the mining space because these minerals and resources are very vital to the technology that they rely on. So, you've been in the industry for a very long time. Right. What would be a piece of advice or something that you would like to, encourage, say to younger investors, not only as an investor side, but also maybe someone that might be a younger person looking to get into this field as a career? So it's a two-part.
Well, sure. Okay. Let me start with a career standpoint. I do talk to a lot of, as many youth groups that I possibly can from high schools into my old university as well as,
Great.
And it, the old adage, it's just like I told you in the beginning, Mike, do something you love. Make sure that you understand the industry that you're going into. I mean, if you're in the mining business, you're going to live from out in nature and out in the wilderness without all of maybe the things that you can get from a big city. I find many youngsters in this industry want to go right to Wall Street or the financial district of Vancouver or Toronto. And that's fine if that's your ultimate goal. But I've run into so many analysts that got a degree, spent 3 months maybe in the industry and then became an analyst. It's like, spend your years there, get a few years under your belt of a variety of experiences to go with it. Don't turn anything down, don't be picky, go with it. If someone thinks, good enough of you to give you a promotion or think like that, make sure that you do it from there. So that would be my advice that I give to all the youngsters. This is a great industry to be in. If you love people and if you love the outdoors and nature and the risk that it presents to itself every day that goes along with it. I do talk to some young investors that do come on to the platform as well. And, as always, it's like, hey, do your due diligence, ask all the questions that you need to ask, consult experts if you've got them, within your family or your immediate area of people that we don't take offense to any of that. I always tell them, I'd rather have a happy shareholder going into this than one that I would do any arm twisting with, if you will. I'm not about that. They need to make their own decisions, and I'll give them, all of the information that we have that they can make their decision on. And like I always say, don't bet your lunch money. You want to keep that for for different times, and if you got a few extra bucks, well, that's what we all do in the marketplace after we've done our checks and balances and made sure we're happy. That goes with it, Anil. So yeah, that would be my advice to young investors.
I think that was sage advice on both those points. So I really appreciate your insight and your encouragement to some of our audience members that might be looking at either becoming an investor in one of the companies or even pursuing this industry as a career. So I always like to end off with something like that. Joseph, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It's been a treat. I myself have learned a lot, not only about Idaho itself, your background, your team, and some of the practices within the mining space. I look forward to hosting you on here again. And
Great.
To our viewers and listeners, this has been another episode of Hashtag Finance that's brought to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange. If you do like this content, I would definitely recommend you to like and to subscribe on YouTube. It is CSE TV, where you'll find our stuff. The podcast itself is available on all major channels that you can find podcasts on. And again, feel free to like it, share it, and comment if there's anything we can do. Again, you can also find us on all social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Again, for the Canadian Securities Exchange, this is Hashtag Finance. Thank you.
Anil, thank you so much. I really